our predisposition as a system that we're trying to press into, which is that we are not going to overspend. We are not going to waste your money. That is like a disciplined behavioral pattern that is well worn into CTC. It's part of what cost controls help to enable, is that you do not waste spend. The challenge that we have to continue to press on the system to produce is to make sure we don't lack volume in light of that. So in this case, we underspent by about 6% and missed revenue by 2%. So there probably was room to press more.
This episode of the e-commerce playbook is brought to you by Mercury. Here at Common Thread Collective, we know that cash flow is everything, especially right now. That's why we always recommend that our clients use Mercury to manage their banking, capital, and cards all from one place. Mercury lets you receive funds, generate invoices, and send free international and domestic wires in US dollars. Mercury also gives you instant access to virtual credit cards and 1.5% cash back across all your spend. Plus, if you need inventory or advertising, try Mercury's founder-friendly capital. Mercury brings all the ways you use money into one product that feels extraordinary to use. Deposit $5,000 or spend $5,000 using your Mercury credit card within your first 90 days to earn $250, or do both for $500 in total rewards. Just go to mercury.com/CTC to give it a try with no minimum deposits. That's mercury.com/CTC. Mercury is a technology company, not a bank. Check show notes for details. Hey folks, welcome back to the e-commerce playbook podcast. I'm your host, Richard Gaffin, Director of Digital Product Strategy here at Common Thread Collective. And I'm joined once again for a CTC client report card update by Taylor Holiday, who's our CEO here, of course, at CTC. Taylor, what's going on, man?
Nothing. Mustache lives on. You didn't lead with the Costa Mesa Yankees. You didn't notice.
Right, damn it.
Mustache is still here. 10-0, right. Mercied them in 4 innings. It was hyped over at Seaview Little League. So we're rolling on to Thursday.
Oh, wow.
My pitcher threw a no-hitter in 4 innings. It was just all around great showing for the Costa Mesa Yankees.
Costa Mesa Yankees firing on all cylinders. And hey, who else is firing on all cylinders?
Oh, boom.
CTC,
he's an expert.
Baby. There you go. That's right. I crushed the segue this time. So yeah, periodically what we've been doing is going over what we're calling the CTC client report card, which aggregates data from across about 60 of our clients and gives us a sense of how close we got to forecast in 3 metrics: overall revenue, spend, and contribution margin. So I'm going to quickly read through what happened. And this is, again, for the month of May. And then we're going to go into some specific wins that we saw and some learnings that our growth strategists got from across this data set. So first off, we were 2.14% behind forecast on revenue. We were 5.83% behind forecast on spend and 4.68% over forecast on contribution margin, which I would say roughly it's all within plus minus 10%. So I would say we're forecasting pretty spot on. But unless there's anything interesting to dive in.
Well, I want to just start with a couple of things. One, this continued exercise of publishing, did we do what we say we're going to do, is an important level of accountability that drives the system improvement. And I just want to continue to reiterate, you should be holding any partner that you have that tells you that they're going to deliver on expectations to this level of transparency. It's inspired by Joy, who does this for our global accelerator across his entire book of business. He publishes the results of each individual customer every month. And so we said, hey, this is a great way for us to continue to publish this ourselves. So this is it. This is how did we do against the thing we said we're going to do? And a wise man who used to work at CTC by the name of Nick Shackelford once sort of surmised the entire job of agency is to set expectations and meet expectations. He used to say this a lot. And I think this is what this is. It's us setting expectations, creating a forecast, creating alignment to that goal, and then did we meet that expectation? And you gave the numbers in reverse order, and our scorecard even goes left to right in terms of revenue, spend, contribution margin. But I would say the actual objective is inverted. The primary objective, number one, is contribution margin. And across all of our customers, we are plus 4.7% to expectation. Revenue just down, but spend less. And so this is, I would say, our predisposition as a system that we're trying to press into, which is that we are not going to overspend. We are not going to waste your money. That is like a disciplined behavioral pattern that is well worn into CTC. It's part of what cost controls help to enable, is that you do not waste spend. The challenge that we have to continue to press on the system to produce is to make sure we don't lack volume in light of that. And so in this case, we underspent by about 6% and missed revenue by 2%. So there probably was room to press more. And so one of the big themes as we've headed into June that I'm pressing on Luke and Tony and all of our other people is don't miss on the volume when it's there. Go get it. And so I think that's the lesson coming out of what I see here is we executed the discipline playbook. We need to make sure we're ensuring that we squeeze out every dollar possible where possible and be aggressive where we're actually exceeding targets and expectation.
Yeah. So then let's jump into some of the ways that obviously the forecasting is one part of it, but one thing that we also do, and one of the expectations that we set for our clients, is that we're going to respond to the data. And so as we see these sort of overages or underages, if that's a word, across these different revenue or across these different metrics, rather, our growth strategists respond in specific ways. So here's a couple sort of insights that came out of this. One was, given that revenue was slightly under forecast for a client here, one of our growth strategists, Max, kind of leaned into strategic price testing, which really sounds like to me just raising prices across a number of different of the product line or whatever. What happened there was that it boosted AOV significantly without negatively impacting conversion rate, which then kind of brought that number back to where, or closer to where it needed to be.
So this is great. So what we're going to try and do with this series, and in the future we'll probably even have some of these growth strategists come join us to tell us a little bit about what they did, is we want to help to reiterate to all of you that great forecasting is an exercise in execution more than it is in modeling. You have to work to make it right. And so what we're going to highlight are what were some of the things that we did to get back on track when we were off course. And depending on where the deficit exists, we're going to cover a few different versions of deficits. The corresponding sets of actions are different as well. So in this case, we have a growth strategist, I think this was Max in this case, who's talking about the fact that he was slightly behind on revenue. So the deficiency to the target of the system was revenue. And so what they leaned into was price testing. They were able to take some of the core SKUs and simply increase the price and see that it was more elastic than they thought, that there was actually room to increase the price without affecting conversion rate. Revenue goes up. In that case, gross margin likely goes up too. And it led to a big win that got them back on track. So especially April and May, price testing became a big narrative topic for a lot of brands because there was all this concern around tariffs and where are we going to actually find that pricing? So it kind of re-entered the zeitgeist of marketing again to really get clear on your price testing. And so whether brands ended up having to pay the tariff or not, that exercise is really valuable to figure out where you can actually maximize the revenue capture.
Yeah. Trusted by more than 200,000 startups, small businesses, and e-commerce companies, plus many of our clients here at CTC, Mercury gives you the ability to manage your banking, capital, and cards all from one place. E-commerce Playbook podcast listeners get $250 by depositing $5,000 or spending $5,000 using the Mercury credit card within your first 90 days, or do both for $500 at mercury.com/CTC. Mercury is a technology company, not a bank. Check show notes for details. Okay, so let's jump to the third one, because I think there's a little bit more meat on that bone. But so this is about contribution margin exceeding forecast overall. So one particular tactic one of our growth strategists used was, this is really interesting, successfully leveraging a short, deep discount. This is up to 60% off for just 10 minutes. And the result there was rapidly boosting revenue, which offset margin pressure through increased order volume. So the takeaway there is like this type of very rapid flash sale can work to kind of relieve some of that pressure. Is this something that you've seen before?
Well, yeah, so 10 minutes is a pretty extreme one.
Yeah.
That's cool. I actually might be fun to do a little bit more of a deep dive on that. But I think one of the things we talk about is that you're always trying to answer this question for your customer, which is, why do you need to buy right now? Not later, not next month, not maybe someday, right freaking now. And 60% off for 10 minutes is certainly that. I know that one thing that I have done in the past is at Kalo, one Black Friday, we ran a different SKU on a deeper discount than the site-wide every hour for a whole day. Like we would go orange rings for the next hour, navy blue rings for the next hour. And it was like these sort of rolling cascade that gave people a reason to keep coming back and checking for what was going on. So I think these kind of gamification, like prior to obviously all the tariff wars, have you ever shopped on Temu? Did you ever?
Yeah. I've looked at it. I think we talked about it before.
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
Like, they sell, like a chainsaw, but then also like ankle socks.
But also like the whole time you're in the app, it feels like a casino.
Yeah.
They're like, click this button to see if you could win 412% off, or like for the next 7 seconds, click this product and you'll get it for $100, or like for free. It's just literally this like never ending casino of changing offers and opportunities and things to try and to get you into engage. And so I do think we underappreciate that you have a job to do of like captivating people's attention when they're even on the site and engaged. And so I think these kinds of ideas of like, imagine you show up to a site and you could sort of get to an exit intent pop up. And it was like, for the next 3 minutes, this SKU for just you is on sale 29%. Like I think there's a lot there that when I look at how effective Temu was at that gamification of the shopping experience, that especially within the right demographic, there's something there for sure. And so this is obviously a cool, and it extends, they beat contribution margin forecast by over 5%. So even the steep discount didn't hurt in terms of driving overall dollar volume.
Yeah. I think it'd be interesting to dig into too. Like a lot of the times we kind of push against the idea of discounting, particularly in this way, because it sort of cheapens brand. But it feels like something that's this sort of like unique or innovative perhaps has the effect of allowing you to discount that deeply without actually ruining brand equity. I don't know if does that track with you or no?
Yeah, I mean, I think the discounting thing, it's funny. I was listening to the operators podcast, and there's this like, what tends to happen in moments where things get hard is like people tend to like loosen their opinions on this. It kind of ends up becoming like, hey, discounts actually aren't so bad. Everybody should probably discount a little,
Mhm.
And so I think it's sort of a privileged position, is the idea that discounts shouldn't exist. And so I think for most brands, price is always going to be the most powerful lever that you can pull on. Now, you don't want to be habitual in that. You don't want it to be the only lever, but it certainly can be one. Again, if you can tie it to these ways in which it's sort of fun and it doesn't feel like you're just doing it because you have to convince someone to buy and this is the only reason they would,
Mhm.
then I think there's certainly ways to use it tactfully. And it kind of connects to the next one. If we go to point 4,
Sure.
which I think is a little bit of an underappreciated opportunity, which is like segmenting more specifically your customers and using offers in these specific segments in ways that can be impactful. So let's go through that one.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, really, like what this is talking about is kind of like overall executing the way that we kind of like run the system here. But I'll just kind of read out what they have written here, which is that employing new versus returning customer forecasting models pinpointed precisely where actual performance diverged from target. Adjustments included ramping up email and SMS outreach, generating fresh evergreen paid social creative, and tailored promotional strategies to specific segments, effectively closing performance gaps. So, a little on the vague side in terms of what actually happened there. But I do think like the overall message is that kind of thing about the reaction to the model, right? So the model allows you to pinpoint where actually the shortcoming actually is. So you have some sense of where the biggest opportunity is. And then what our growth strategist did was just attack those with the various levers that they had. But yeah, what do you want to dig into here?
Yeah, no, so I think that's exactly right. So if you're able to see, oh, my deficit is out of my expectation of my returning customer revenue, then you can go to begin to ideate to solve that problem. And the sort of blunt force one is like mass ship everybody an email with an offer. But I think, and a lot of times what we'll get is brands become resistant to this idea of just sending more email. But what can feel better to them is we're now going to take slices of your email base and design communication relative to them. So I don't know. You imagine you're born primitive and you have men and women in the customer email database. So that's an easy slice of offers. You have leggings purchasers. You have people who have bought shoes. You have people who have bought tactical pants. You have people who bought outdoors products. You can look at sort of the seasonal calendar of moments and things going on. So what you can do is you can start to say, okay, maybe if I have a 1,000,000 person email list, here's 50,000 that I'm going to design and say something really specific to them. So this offer is going to be for a smaller subset to try and make up a little bit of deficit, but it's going to feel very personal. It's going to feel thoughtful. It's going to be about trying to expand a customer's engagement deeper into the product catalog. And you can now start to segment. Same thing with SMS. And so sometimes when we have these deficits around returning customer revenue, what we like to do is say, okay, are there opportunities to do win back campaigns about someone who bought leggings a year ago and maybe they have never come back? And so we're going to write an email about, here's how we've improved our leggings over the last year. And we're actually going to like tell you a story about why you should come back. And it's going to be very specific and thoughtful. And so I think just trying to take the deficit of returning customer revenue and use all the available resources to go solve it, I think is an important action that you can take when you're clear on where the deficit comes from.
Yeah. And I think like, I'll jump back to number 2, which we skipped because again, it's a little bit sort of, it's more general, but it does speak to the same thing, which is that managing spend means holding each marketing channel accountable to specific business objectives, which allowed our growth strategists then to quickly diagnose spend inefficiencies, reallocating resources to the channel most aligned with the brand's goals. So very similar, but maybe more on the sort of the paid channel side in terms of having some understanding of where to allocate your budget on a daily basis based on that. So I don't know if anything else that you want to dig into here on this report card, Taylor.
No, I want to. So the other one we have is this, like you said, the spend management and channel accountability. Overall spend exceeded forecast by 6%. And the note is just this idea of clarity of allocation to different channels. So we've been public talking about this sort of new metric around IMR, this idea of incremental marginal return, which is basically just IROAS. So your incrementality factor times your channel conversion value or times your gross margin. And what it allows us to do is when we open our dashboard, we can visually very simply compare every channel to one another so that you can look at, it's often very hard to go, Google's at a 14 ROAS and Meta's at a 1.7, like which one should I actually allocate the dollars to? But when you can see them all and they all are compared to the same IROAS expectation or IMR expectation, then you can make allocation decisions much more clearly. So even today, I was trading notes with a growth strategist around where they're at. And it's like, hey, Google is being underspent here. Like, it's just very obvious and intuitive. And so I think one of the things that we are constantly feel that we have an advantage in is the clarity of allocation, the clarity of cross-channel allocation, which is usually such a difficult thing to decide between to determine the next best action. And so I think you look at all of this and it's the clarity of expectation, whether that's new versus returning customer revenue, channel level targets, overall revenue and contribution margin, that gives the opportunity to create clarity of action. Clarity of expectation creates clarity of action. And that's why we're able to persistently forecast and deliver on those expectations month after month after month.
That's right. And speaking of which, we will talk to you guys again next month to review our June scorecard. And as Taylor mentioned, I think what we're going to do is bring some of the growth strategists who actually executed some of the stuff on so they can dig a little deeper into the specifics and kind of get a sense of what it actually means on the ground to set those expectations and then meet them. So for the time being, thanks folks for listening, and we will talk to you next time.